Hey guys, it's Handcrafted by Jason Cooper, back with you today with another video, another DIY video in this case. Not really building something today, I'm fixing something, but I'm going to do this, hopefully save myself some money and figure out what's going on here. Before we jump into the project, be sure to hit the like on this video and subscribe if you want to see more videos. So the problem today is, it's summer, we need the air conditioning running, we live in Nebraska, it's hot and muggy, and we have a problem. So we're working in the in our room, doing some cleaning, stuff like that. My wife is just doing what she's doing and suddenly says, "Hey, do you smell something burning?" And I'm like, I come over to her and I smell like, yeah, it actually does smell like something burning. And the air conditioner was running, and that smells kind of like what it does when the furnace comes on for the first time in the winter and kind of burns off all the dust and junk that settles on the elements. So I'm like, oh boy, that's not good. Sure enough, I reached down and checked the vent, which was right there next to where we were, and there was warm air coming out of the vent. So for some reason, our air conditioning wasn't working, but not only was it not working, it was pumping hot air. Well, that's a problem. So we had this happen one other time, about 2 years ago, I think it was, and the same thing happened. I shut everything down, called our HVAC guy, got him out pretty quickly, and turned everything back on, and it wasn't doing it. He couldn't find any problems. It was cooling just fine. We just kind of chalked it up to just kind of one of those things, you know, that just happens, and you never know why, and you just move along. Well, it happened again. Problem is, our HVAC guy retired, and no longer could just call him up and have him pop over and check it out. So well, okay, I'll do a little checking myself, see what's going on. Because the reality is, replacing some of the parts on these units are not that difficult if they're just some of the smaller, simple parts. But if you're familiar with heat pumps, if you have a heat pump and you're having a similar problem where it's summer and all of a sudden you're getting warm air, there's only a couple things really that it can be. Now, the way a heat pump works, it's different than a traditional air conditioner. Traditional air conditioner only works in one direction, and it can only bring the cool inside and dump the heat outside. A heat pump is essentially the same concept: compressor, condenser, coils inside, the air flows over and takes either the heat or cold into the house. But it can work either way. It can bring the cool inside and dump the heat outside, or take the heat from outside, dump it inside, whatever. It can go both directions, heat or cool. And in some climates, that's all you need. In our climate, we're in Nebraska, it gets pretty hot and muggy in the summer, but it gets very cold in the winter. And a heat pump only works efficiently down to certain temperatures. And out here, it can get well below zero, for one, at night for sure. And we can go days on end in the middle of winter where we never get above zero. And a heat pump can't quite keep up. So here you always have a backup heat system that's integrated with your heat pump. So your inside air handler has a heating element in it, either gas or electric, and then your heat pump is outside doing its thing, and then you've got your thermostat controlling it all. So here we have all electric heat, all electric house. I mean, we don't have gas, so I have electric heating elements in my furnace, a backup heat source, and the whole unit knows when to bring that on and when to turn it off, right? So when it gets really cold and it can't keep up, it'll bring on the heating elements. And if it gets really, really cold and then the heat pump can't really do anything, it'll just keep the heating elements on and heat the house in the winter. But in the summer, that shouldn't be coming on. Now, there's two reasons that a heat pump will bring on the electric heating element. One is what I just described. It gets so cold it's in heat mode, and it needs to supplement the heat coming from the heat pump. Well, that obviously was not the issue. We were not in heat mode, and we were in cool mode, and there shouldn't be any reason the heating elements were coming on. The other reason it will bring on the heating elements is if you manually tell it to. You can set it to emergency heat. If you have a heat pump and it says it has an emergency heat setting, that basically says don't worry about the heat pump, bring on the electric heating elements. You need to either warm up the house more quickly, or it's so cold you just know you're not going to need the heat pump. So, and then the last option is when you're in heat mode. Again, this is in heat mode, but we weren't in heat mode. When you're in heat mode and it's dumping cool to outside, or bringing the heat inside and dumping the cold outside in winter, when it gets below right around freezing, the outside unit has to make sure it doesn't freeze up. So if there's some moisture in the air or whatever, and it starts to get frost on the condenser unit outside, it needs to go through a defrost cycle in order to dissipate that frost on the coils outside. And because if it freezes up, you lose that heating capacity. Air is no longer passing along and transferring like it's supposed to, and you end up with a big ice block outside. So when it gets that cold and it senses that it needs to do it, it brings on the electric heat, because again, this is in heat mode in the winter, so that it doesn't start blowing cold air, and then it has to basically reverse the process and dump some heat to outside in order to melt any condensation or frost off the coils outside. And then I think it only takes a few minutes, and then it'll switch back to, with the reversing valve and reverse the process, and then it'll shut off the auxiliary heat on the inside. So it's got to be something going on there that's calling for heat, even though we're running air conditioning. And I know that it was cooling because I know that it wasn't just flipping to heat mode. Number one, because that's how the thermostat was set. But number two, because you can go down and feel the line coming in from outside, and it's usually the insulated line. There's two lines, one comes in, one goes out. So, in the winter it comes in hot and goes out cooler on the other line that's not insulated. And in the summer it comes in cool and then goes out warmer on the other line. So you can feel the line where it comes into your air handler. And ours was cool, so it was trying to air condition, but it was bringing on the electric heat. So we have to, check this out. So, and it works on a low voltage control wire. So if there's voltage on the wire, that means it's supposed to be doing something. If there's not voltage, it's not supposed to. So there's a wire for the fan that brings the fan on. There's a wire for the condenser itself, not the condenser, the compressor that brings on the compressor. And with a heat pump, it doesn't know whether to heat or cool. It just runs, but the other wire that determines that is the reversing valve. There's a wire that controls the reversing valve, whether that comes on or not. And depending on your heat pump, those vary. Some need voltage on the wire to cool. Some need voltage on the wire to heat. They work just the opposite. So you just need to look up your unit, figure out which one it is before you start digging into this. And then there's the auxiliary heat, which in my case is a white wire. So we have to figure out, number one, obviously I'm expecting that there's voltage on the white wire, that there's voltage on the, because that's the auxiliary heat, bringing on the heat elements. I'm expecting that the yellow wire, which is telling the compressor outside to come on, that's going to be on, because whether it's heat or cool, that's going to be on. And then in my case, I shouldn't get voltage on the reversing valve, because the way mine works, that's how it works. Yours might be the opposite of that. And obviously the fan should have voltage come on its wire, telling the fan to come on and circulate air in the house. So we're going to go check that out. We're going to start the thermostat, check there, verify that what I suspect is the case, that we're getting voltage on that white wire, but check the other ones just to make sure there's not something goofy going on, and then we'll start troubleshooting from there. Let's go inside. Quick pause right here. I am not a professional. You are not a professional. Well, you might be a professional watching this. So if you're not comfortable troubleshooting these issues by yourself, maybe you have a buddy who knows more, maybe even works in the HVAC field. But if you don't know what you're doing and you have no idea, be careful, call a professional, and be good. In my case, I know a couple people I've talked to, picked up some things over the years. I'm comfortable troubleshooting this and figuring out what's going on. And then I can decide whether I'm comfortable repairing it. Same should go for you. All right, so the first place to start, at least the easiest place to start, is going to be your thermostat. So we know that we have cooling trying to happen the same time as the heat is coming on. And here is probably the easiest way, and at least easiest place in most cases, to access the wires and see what's going on. Now my thermostat, the cover just pops off and you can see everything underneath, and I'll do that here. Put the camera down for a second. All right, so here we go. And you can see we've got it in cool mode. Air conditioner is running. It's set to a temperature lower than the room temperature. And here you can see the terminals, because again, the cover just comes off mine. It doesn't actually pull the thermostat off the wall or anything. and they're labeled here. So R, that's your low voltage coming in, and C, that's your common. That's basically your return path for your voltage, kind of like your black and your white on a standard circuit, but red and black on here. Your G, that is for your fan that turns on the fan that blows the air in your house. This is O or B, depending on your unit, and that has to do with the heat pumps. That's a heat pump thing, and that's the reversing valve. So depending on what kind of heat pump you have, what brand, most of them are one way, and then Rheems, which I have, are the other way in terms of whether that comes on during heat or cool. Yellow is calling for cool, and then white, notice these are jumped white, or W2 to E for emergency heat. That brings on the electric heating elements inside downstairs in the furnace. So we're just going to jump these terminals and figure out, well, we're going to check and see if we have voltage here, because if we have voltage here, then we know somewhere is calling for the emergency heat to come on. The yellow should be on, the green should be on, and you know, mainly though we're looking for this white W2 and E terminal here to see what's going on. All right, so I've got my multimeter. I'm going to turn it to the voltage on the alternating current. And just to show you here, we're going to test across this should be the power coming in on the red. The common terminal, you're going to have voltage there. If you don't have voltage there, your system shouldn't be working at all. At least not from the thermostat perspective, because there's no voltage to call for heat or cool. But we're going to keep that common terminal. In fact, let me just shift that one over. And we're going to check here again. You should have voltage on the what is that, G? That brings on the fan. Yellow brings on cool. Yep, notice it's there. And again, this is the reversing valve, and depending on what kind of heat pump you have, you're either going to have voltage or not, depending on whether heating or cooling. You have to look that up. But at this point, we know that's not the problem, because we're getting cool. The line coming in is cool, not hot, to the coil downstairs. So I know it's not accidentally heating instead of cooling, but it is bringing on the emergency heat, backup heat. So, yep, so we have voltage here. Of course, that's jumped, so it's going to show on either one. So we know that somewhere we're getting voltage on our white wire that's calling for the auxiliary to heat come on, even though we're calling for cool as well. So we're going to have to go downstairs. Even though we're checking it here at the thermostat, it does not mean the thermostat is the source of that 24 volts. We have to go downstairs, find where the white wires connect, disconnect them, and then test them individually to see if the electricity is coming from the thermostat, coming from the outside unit, the condenser unit, or inside at the air handler. And then we'll know which one to deal with. All right, one quick correction to what I said. I said that the yellow wire is cool. I misspoke. On a heat pump, the yellow wire tells the compressor to come on, and then the reversing valves tells it whether to be in heat mode or cool mode. So just a quick correction on there. The yellow is going to be on, I should have voltage on that, regardless of whether I'm heat mode or cool mode, because that oh dog, because that tells the compressor to come on, which it has to do in both heat and cool. And then again, the reversing valve tells it whether it is heating or whether it is cooling. All right, so here we are at the air handler. Obviously this has the auxiliary heat unit inside of it. There's several electric elements there that come on when the heat pump can't handle the temperature. You know, some people have natural gas. We have all electric, so there's electric heating elements in there. So we know that somewhere in either the control board in here, control board at the thermostat, or the control board outside, is telling the electric heat to come on. Now we've already been up to the thermostat. We know that we're getting that current on the white wire. We just have to figure out where it's coming from. But you can't, just because we're detecting it at the thermostat does not mean it's coming from the thermostat, because those wires are connected down here. So here's the white wire from the thermostat. Whoops. Here's the white wire from the outside condenser unit. And then here's the white wires. There's actually two of them on this unit that go inside to the control board in here. So we need to figure out if the electricity is coming on this one, coming on this one. If it's neither of those, that means that somewhere in this control board it's telling it to bring on the auxiliary heat when it doesn't need to. So the simple way to test this with is with a multimeter. I've got mine set up here. It's going to be a little hard to do with one hand here, but we'll see if we make it work. Hopefully I'm making a connection, which I'll have to check and make sure. But I'm going to test this wire is coming from the thermostat. You can see nothing on the multimeter. These wires coming from the air handler inside. No voltage. And this one is coming from the condenser outside. Oh, looky there. We got voltage. We got 26, 27 volts. So the outside unit is, for some reason, telling the electric heat to come on while in cool mode. We know that our problem is in the defrost control board outside. Now, it could be that it's the whole board, and it could be that there's some kind of short or something that's obvious on there. More than likely, unless there's some real obvious short situation going on, you're probably just going to have to replace the whole board. Fortunately, they're not real expensive. You just got to find the right part based on your model number. And it's not the model number in here, it's the model number out there. And usually it's going to be right on the board itself, and then the model of the unit, and you can figure out what you need. All right, so here we are outside with the condenser unit. I'm gonna get this cover off. I'm gonna disconnect the power. I've set off the breakers inside already for both the furnace and this outside unit. In my case, that's 2 separate sets of breakers. You probably have the same thing. You wanna shut those off. But I'm also gonna pull the disconnect out here just for an extra level of safety and go from there. Now, I've already pulled this apart once and traced the wires to figure out where that white wire was going to. And there was no obvious short. There was nothing that clearly was just pulling voltage off of something else, and a quick easy fix by keeping some wires from touching. So I went ahead and ordered a new control board, defrost control board for out here, and we're going to put that in. Fairly straightforward process. There's a couple of sensors involved in this one. One goes on the coils, one's an ambient air sensor, and it just goes down underneath here. Hopefully you'll see all that when we go through this. And it's just a matter of swapping the wires one for one on the new model, the new board with the old board, and matching that all up. I'm going to take pictures before I disconnect the old one in case I have any problems. I need to get it back in place, and we'll go from there. Should be annoying, tedious, but not too difficult. So let's go. Power's off. Just a quick closer look for it, y'all. If you've never been in here, this is a contactor. This takes a low voltage signal and triggers this is a 220 volts out here, so you got two 110s coming in, and allows it to switch. Basically a little electromagnet in there that closes the contacts. This is a control board. If you're having similar trouble, you're going to look for the different part numbers on here. There was mine, 472151722, if you can see that there. Looked that up, called a couple places. It's been replaced, so there's some newer part numbers, but that's it. And you can see here, in this case, the purple wire is connected to my white wire and is sending that voltage back. You can see that's on the D for defrost. It's trying to kick on the defrost cycle in cool mode, which it does not need to do. So we're going to pull this out of there. There's a couple of screws here. We're going to carefully swap it for the new one, which I ordered and have on hand, and we'll go from there. All right, so I got that swapped out. It's kind of a pain in the butt. We got everything connected except for the sensors. Now this one, the old one, still hanging here. You can see 2 wires are still, these are hardwired in. Those are the sensors, ambient air, and then the coil sensor. Actually, you can see that labeled right on there. And so the new one comes with ones that are, that you plug in. There they are. Plug into the existing board. It's over here on there. And so I've got to fish these old ones out through here. One sits under here, and then the other one sits, actually this is it right here, just the ambient air sensor. So I got to fish those out, connect the new sensors, and then I can fire this all back up and test it out, and hopefully everything's good. All right, so I got the sensors in. Now in this case, they only connect one place on the board, and they're 2 different size connectors. So one's 3-pin, one's 2-pin. So pretty straightforward where they go. Run them down in there. I got everything swapped out and just, test them all, make sure they're seated good. Do watch out for some of these other contacts there. You got capacitors and stuff. You might still hold a voltage even though we got the power shut off. And if you, for a little better look here, that ambient air sensor is just sitting right here where the old one did. There's a little zip tie it came with that pops up through to that little hole there, right there. Holds it in. And then the coil sensor, you can see it up in there. It's in there. I can't tell if you can see it on the camera or not, but it's up in there. A little hard to get to without taking stuff off, but managed to get it up there swapped out with the old one. And so we're gonna put this back together. We're gonna put the power back on. There's a 5-minute timeout cycle on the compressor. So after 5 minutes or so, we'll test the whole system out again, make sure we're not still getting heat coming on while the air conditioner's running. All right, so we have everything connected back up. The new board is in. The wires are reconnected downstairs at the air handler where I disconnected the white wires earlier. That's all put back together. The power's back on. The thing is running. I get the compressor outside is running. And there is cool air coming out our vents. I checked the lines coming in. It's cold like it's supposed to be, and the auxiliary heat is not coming on. Now the easiest way to just double check all this, again, it's easy to access these at my thermostat, so I'm going to check it there. Again, you got your R terminal and your C terminal. That's your voltage coming in, just to verify that your multimeter works. If you don't get voltage from your R to your C, then something's wrong. But anyway, so keeping the one probe on the common terminal. I know that I should have voltage on the fan. Yep, the fan was running. In my case, the reversing valve will not have voltage. Some, because we're in cooling mode, but most heat pumps, you will actually have voltage in cooling mode and not in heat mode. It's just the ream is a little bit different. Yellow brings the compressor on outside. We got voltage on there. It's running to cool. And then the problem was again here in the auxiliary heat, in the emergency heat. Notice now we have no voltage, so we know that we've taken care of our problem. It's not calling for a defrost cycle, so to speak, like it was before, and we're back up and running with cool air. Well, that's it for today. We've got our air conditioner back up and running, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to check it in the other modes too. I'm going to put it in heat mode and make sure it's running right, and I'm going to turn on the auxiliary heat and make sure that is working too. But I'm fairly comfortable that that voltage is gone. It's not where it's where it shouldn't be. I mean, it's back to the way it should be. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I think we're going to be fine. Again, it's your house, it's your place. You just proceed with caution if you want to do these kind of projects. Otherwise, call a professional or a buddy who knows more. And if you're going to get into this DIY stuff. That's it for today. I hope you like this video. Hope it's helpful. Again, this is a specific brand of Rheem heat pump. Yours may be a little bit different. Might be a different brand. Might work a little bit differently. But the concepts are the same of how the low voltage control system works. Either there's voltage on a wire or there's not, and that tells it whether to do this, that, or the other. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's helpful for you, and you can hopefully troubleshoot some of your own things and do some of your own DIY. All right, thanks.